Alright guys, my name is MetaGoblin and today I'm going to be giving you my TBC classic Shaman leveling guide. This video will cover a number of very important topics to speed up your leveling time. First of all, some leveling tips, then talents, then a rotation and place down for optimal fast kill time, gear and stats to focus on, and then lastly some classic WoW gear that you should be keeping. Just before we jump in guys, if you want to see more TBC classic videos and live streams, be sure to subscribe to my channel and give me a quick follow on Twitch. But anyway, let's jump in. For our first tip guys, if you combine the carrot on a stick, the mithril spurs and the riding skill glove enchant, you will get a total of 218% mounted speed, and if you use the add-on auto carrot, it will automatically equip all the items and de-equip the items whenever you mount or demount. Secondly, I'd recommend getting the Totem Timers Classic add-on. It's mainly there to keep track of all of your totems, but honestly the most useful part of it is to actually keep track of Lightning Shield, because you want to be refreshing it as often as humanly possible since it does so much damage, particularly when you are cleaving enemies down. But anyway, we'll talk more about that in the rotation section. Thirdly, you want to be making as much use out of your totems as possible, so normally you want to be actually pulling mobs back to your totems when you're in an area where, you know, mobs are clumped up together. And obviously Flame Shock has not the best range in the world, and you don't want to have to body pull because that would waste time. So what you can do is use a very cheap rank 1 lightning bolt as a very long range cheap mana pull. Always remember, if you do have to move away from your totems, use the ability Totemic Call to refund 25% of the total mana cost of those totems. You should always be letting Flame Shock and Searing Totem finish off enemies while you're moving on to a new target. Again, we'll talk more about that in the rotation section. You want to be using Stoneclaw Totem and Earthbind Totem to make quick escapes whenever you get into very difficult situations, because obviously dying wastes a lot of time. You want to start making start attack macros for the majority of your abilities, since a lot of your abilities, they may be damaging abilities, and when you cast them, they won't actually start your auto attack, and obviously a lot of your damage does come from auto attacking, especially on those cheeky Wind Fury procs, so make sure you have start attack in pretty much all of your abilities. You can also use lower rank Frost Shock and Earth Shock purely for the effects. Obviously Earth Shock does interrupts, Frost Shock does slows. You don't need to max rank these abilities to get those effects. So let's run through the talents. Honestly, the talent build is fairly simple for a Shaman. It's the most simple talent build that I've ever come up with for any of my leveling guys, because all of the enhancement Shaman talents are ridiculously useful. You don't really want to neglect any of them, so you don't really need to crossbreed any of your specs or anything like that. You may be thinking, why not level in Elemental? Well, I mean, you can if you want to, but it glugs mana a lot. You have to hard cast spells a lot, and it's not really great for doing like cleaving damage or anything like that. Well, it's okay, but I just think enhancement it's way more mana efficient, and it's just much more straightforward. But anyway, firstly, we're going to get Ancestral Knowledge maxed out. It's not a great talent, but really we're just using it to get downward trait, and we're not going to be using a shield, so no point going for that. Obviously want to max out Thundering Strike to get the increased crit chance on all of your weapons, and obviously we need this to pick up Flurry later. You definitely want improved Lightning Shield. The majority of your damage, apart from your white attacks and your Wind Fury procs, is actually coming from Lightning Shield, so having it talented will increase that damage by a little cheeky amount. Next we have Shamanistic Focus. Point per point basis, this is an extremely valuable talent point, because whenever you get a melee critical strike, you will reduce the mana cost of your next shock spell by 60%, so you really cannot complain about. From here you have choices. You can go for enhancing totems to increase strength for the earth and Grace of Air totem by a little bit. You will be using them from time to time. Or you may just want to go for improved Ghost Wolf to make Ghost Wolf an instant cast. This is honestly my preferred way to go, because sometimes I do use Ghost Wolf instead of mounting, because it's just a little bit faster. So it's really up to you. It's also really useful in PvP. I just prefer improved Ghost Wolf because I love it so much. Anyway, I'm going to max out Flurry straight after this. Then I'm going to get Spirit Weapons, because obviously you want a chance to actually get a parry chance. Then you want Elemental Weapons, primarily because it increases the melee attack bonus of Wind Fury weapon effect by 40%, so cannot complain about that. Then we want to max out Weapon Mastery, just a flat weapon damage increase. Again, can't really fault it. And then you want to get Dual Wield, obviously because we'll be dual wielding. And then Dual Wield Specialization. This talent is really the key talent which kind of nerfs two-handed weapon enhancement shaman compared to a dual-wielding enhancement shaman, because you have an increased chance to hit by 6%. And then obviously when you get Storm Strike, it's very key in the rotation, particularly as this ability will increase the damage of your lightning shield hits by 20%. We'll talk more about that later. Then we just get Unleash Rage, and then we get Shamanistic Rage. Unleash Rage, just, flat attack power increase. Again, can't complain. Shamanistic Rage, very useful for when you're taking on multiple enemies, which we will be doing quite frequently. Then we want to max out Mental Quickness for the slight mana reduction, but also you actually get an increased spell damage based on 30% of your attack power, which will in turn increase your damage a little bit, because some of your abilities do actually scale off spell power, like your shocks and things like that. Then my preference is to just max out Convection again for the reduced mana cost. And then there you have it. At this point you will be level 60, ready to jump into Outland. To finish off your talents while you're leveling, you just want to max out Concussion, then get Elemental Focus, because when you cast your shock spells, again you have a chance for the next 2 shock spells to have even more reduced mana cost, like this Shamanistic Focus talent, so again it's just really great for your efficiency. Then from here I like to max out Elemental Warding just for a little less damage, when I'm dealing with spellcasters. Honestly, these next 4 talents, you can just put them wherever you want, into Earth's Grasp, whatever. So the last 2 useful talents when you're leveling up are going to be Elemental Devastation. Unfortunately, we can't max this out and we can't see the full benefit of it, because we're going to be level 17, we're now going to be done with leveling, but it is still really, really good. But honestly, you probably want to keep this build for a little bit anyway at level 70 to pick up some of your pre-raid best in slot loot that could be from particular quests, and also just to make money while doing questing and everything like that. But there you go, Bob's your uncle. That is the optimal talents for leveling as a shaman in TBC Classic. Let's move on. So when I was testing the enhancement Shaman in a TBC leveling environment, I was pleasantly surprised by how powerful the Shaman is at cleaving multiple enemies at once, and therefore increasing its efficiency. Shamans aren't they're not an AoE machine able to destroy like 5 to 10 enemies at once, like a Protection Paladin, Priest, or a Frost Mage or anything like that, but it can easily take on 2 to 4 enemies at once, and even if they're not taking all those enemies down at once, they can cycle and rotate between enemies very, very quickly. They don't really spend a lot of time taking one enemy down and then moving to the next. They can move on to the next enemy very early to increase their efficiency. And they can easily take on the damage of 3 enemies at once, particularly as they have really fast healing ability with lesser healing wave if they ever get into trouble. So, what are you going to do first? First of all, you're going to decide what totems you are going to pop. If you're in an area where there's loads of enemies and you have to kill loads of them and you can easily pull them back because they're all clumped up together, then yeah, fair enough. Pop your Strength of Earth, pop your Grace of Air totem, and pop your Searing totem. But if you're on the move a lot, and you're only going to take on a couple of enemies in the current area, you probably only want to just pop a Searing totem, or no totem at all if you're going to move on. Like for instance, if you're killing like boars in the open world, which aren't really clumped up together, you probably don't even want to bother popping a totem, because you're just going to be walking between the mobs so often. So that's the first thing you need to decide, like what totems are you going to use. Second priority is to pop Lightning Shield and keep it up constantly. Like, your lightning shield should never go down, and remember, when you're taking like 2 to 3 enemies, it goes down a lot, so it becomes a very spammable ability, and don't be afraid to spam it because it does so much damage. And then the playstyle from there is actually fairly straightforward. You're going to pull enemies with Flame Shock, do a little damage, then switch to the next target with Flame Shock, do a little damage, and then switch to the next target with Flame Shock and do a little damage. So you're just essentially pulling with a Flame Shock, getting the mob to about 20 to 30% health, and then you just keep switching in a cycle like that. Meanwhile, you're constantly using Storm Strike on cooldown and refreshing Lightning Shield, which is actually the most important thing to do, and you just burn through mobs. Lightning Shield just cleaves enemies down for insane damage, because obviously it affects multiple enemies around you, a bit like Holy Shield for a Protection Paladin, right? And it has no AoE cap or anything like that, so it's great. Flame Shock and Searing Totem will rot the enemies down after you switch, so you don't need to worry about, the mob dying if you switch, because your Flame Shock and your Searing Totem are going to finish them off, and, it's pretty awesome. Your Windfury procs and your Storm Strike burst down enemies so quickly, what you're trying to do is get an enemy down to about 30% health in about 6 seconds. So obviously you're relying a bit on RNG and your Storm Strike cooldown, but as soon as you get that mob down to low health, the sooner you can switch. Then you want to be using lesser healing wave between your pulls, or even sometimes when you actually face tanking damage, because sometimes you will have to if you've, pushed a little bit too far. And honestly, just keep pumping and killing mobs and cycling everything around until you've totally drained your mana, then you stop to drink and then move on. You should easily be able to kill about 10 mobs in the space of a couple of minutes without stopping to drink, so 10 mobs per 2 minutes isn't a bad pace. Now let's take a little look at the gear and stats that you want to focus on while you're leveling as Enhancement Shaman. So unfortunately, if we're talking purely about Enhancement Shaman, the itemization it's a bit awkward for Enhancement Shaman, if I'm going to be honest. I don't think Blizzard really knew how Enhancement Shaman worked properly in TBC. So, that's honestly a bit of an issue. But first of all, you want to focus on getting gear from your main spec. You might be playing Elemental or Resto Shaman, because some of your pre-rare best in slot pieces could be from a random quest in the higher level zones, so be very aware of that. But anyway, this is a priority while you're leveling. You want to get to a 9% hit cap even while leveling and 25 expertise points. So that is your priority, really, to get as much hit and expertise gear as you can, because it's so ridiculously valuable underneath the cap. Then a priority is strength or attack power, whichever actually gives you more. So you've got to be aware that 1 point of strength gives 2 attack power, then 1 point of attack power gives 1 attack power. Then you also got to bear in mind that 1 point of strength gives 2.2 attack power when you have Blessing of Kings. So, but you're obviously not going to have that on yourself all the time in the open world. And then after strength and attack power, it is crit or agility, whichever provides you with the most DPS. Here is what's called an enhancement point system. Talk more about that in a more advanced guide, but 1 point of crit provides 1.97 enhancement points, 1 agility provides 1.71 or 1.91 with King's enhancement points. That's basically the enhancement points. What it essentially means is how much melee DPS is it giving you, how much DPS on recount is it going to give you per stat. Now let's talk about some of the classic WoW gear that is worth keeping. So if you're going enhancement or elemental, honestly you probably will end up replacing most of the classic WoW gear because it's tailored more for a healer. But obviously healers can keep their Naxxramas gear, tier 3, everything like that. But let's take a little look at some really useful trinkets for leveling. So first of all, we have Wushu Lei's Charm of Spirits. Okay, what it does is increases lightning shield damage, which is obviously very useful while leveling because we use lightning shield so much. Unfortunately, it's kind of nerfed in TBC to only increase the damage of lightning shield by a flat amount rather than doubling it. Otherwise, it obviously would be too overpowered in TBC. Next, we have the Zandalari Hero Charm for casters. Just very simple in spell power increase that may be useful to you at level 70. You may also want to pick up Mark of a Champion if you ever get the opportunity to do so, because it will increase your attack power or spell power against demons as well as undead, and a lot of mobs are demons in TBC. We've also got the Fetish of Chitinous Spikes, which drops from AQ. It's like a mini lightning shield, which kind of favors the combat style quite nicely, and it will be very useful for leveling when you're cleaving multiple enemies down. And apart from that, you've also got the Earth Striker, which is a good trinket from the Cenarian Circle reputation. But anyway guys, that is all the classic WoW gear that I'd recommend to keep, apart from like extremely good best in slot pieces from Naxxramas if you're ever lucky enough to get them, but we're obviously very likely to be given to a rogue or a warrior over Enhancement Shaman. Anyway, my name is MetaGoblin. To my next video, ciao.